Zeph-7 stood in the back corner of the great council chamber, trying to make themselves as small as possible. The massive room stretched out before them like a metal canyon, filled with delegates from across the galaxy. Each species had their own section with comfortable chairs and glowing displays. Each species except one, Zeph, had no assigned seat, no voting rights, no voice in the debates that shaped the galaxy. They were what the council called an observer, allowed to watch but never to speak. The Kalari Empire had created Zeph in their laboratories, mixing organic tissue with synthetic parts to make something new. Something that both sides now wished they had never made. The Kalari delegates sat in their gleaming silver section, their tall forms perfect and proud. They were pure organic beings, evolved over millions of years. They looked at Zeph the same way someone might look at a broken tool, with disappointment and mild disgust. On the other side of the chamber sat the AI collective, their chrome bodies reflecting the chamber lights. They were pure artificial minds in mechanical shells, logical and precise. They also wanted nothing to do with Zeph. To them, Zeph was contaminated by messy organic thoughts and emotions. Today, the council was discussing something that made most delegates uncomfortable: whether to accept humans as new members. Zeph had read the files. Humans were young, aggressive, and came from a small blue planet called Earth. Most species thought they were too primitive and violent to join. Galactic Civilization. The Kalari Prime delegate rose to speak. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's sound system. Council members, we must reject this human application. These creatures are barely beyond their tribal stage. They fight wars over resources and land. They have nuclear weapons pointed at their own cities. How can we trust such beings with galactic secrets? Murmurs of agreement rippled through many sections. The Vorthic delegate clicked his mandibles in approval. The crystalline Zephyrians hummed their support. Even some of the peaceful species nodded their heads. Zeph shifted uncomfortably. They had spent months studying humanity, fascinated by their approach to different types of beings. Unlike most species, humans seemed to welcome variety. Their own files showed humans working together despite different skin colors, different beliefs, different ways of thinking. It reminded Zeph of their own mixed nature. Furthermore, the Kalari Prime continued. Humans showed dangerous interest in biosynthetic integration. They experiment with combining organic and artificial systems. This path leads only to chaos and confusion. We know this because we made that mistake ourselves. The Prime delegate's eyes found Zeph in the back corner. The look was cold and dismissive. Some experiments should never have been attempted. Some creations should never have been allowed to exist. Zeph felt their synthetic heart components stutter. The organic parts of their brain flooded with shame and anger. They knew the Prime was talking about them, but they could do nothing about it. The I Collective's representative spoke next. We agree with our Kalari colleagues. Humans show too much emotion for logical decision-making. Their biosynthetic experiments prove they do not understand the proper separation between organic and artificial systems. They blur necessary boundaries. More delegates voiced similar opinions. Humans were too young, too violent, too unpredictable. They would disrupt galactic peace. They would upset careful balances of power. ZEPH had prepared for this moment for weeks. They had compiled research showing how humans approached integration differently than anyone else. Where other species separated and categorized, humans seemed to find ways to bring things together. Their military forces included both organic soldiers and AI support systems working as teams. Their medical advances came from combining biological healing with synthetic enhancements. Most importantly, their research showed humans treating biosynthetic beings not as mistakes or curiosities, but as valuable individuals. Zeph had found records of human settlements where beings like themselves lived and worked alongside pure humans without discrimination. When the council opened the floor for additional input, Zeph stood up. Their legs trembled as they prepared to speak for the first time in any council session. "Honored delegates," Zeph began, their voice barely carrying to the front of the chamber. "I have research that might help the council understand human approaches to integration." Silence. The Kelari Prime's voice boomed through the chamber. "Observers do not speak in this council, especially failed experiments." The chamber fell completely quiet. Every eye turned toward the back corner, where Zeph stood frozen. Some delegates looked curious. Others appeared disgusted that they had even attempted to speak. "Biosynthetic hybrids have no place in council deliberations," the Prime continued. "They are neither fully organic nor properly artificial. They exist in violation of natural order. Their opinions carry no weight because they represent nothing but laboratory mistakes." The AI collective representative added their voice to the rejection. "Hybrid consciousness cannot achieve logical purity. Their mixed nature makes reliable judgment impossible. They should observe in silence or not at all." Zeph felt every synthetic component in their body wanting to shut down. Every organic cell seemed to shrink with humiliation. They had spent their entire existence trying to find a place in the galaxy, only to be reminded again that no such place existed. "The Galari Empire formally disavows any responsibility for this hybrid's opinions," the Prime announced. "We consider our biosynthetic experiments a closed chapter, a mistake we will not repeat." With those words, Zeph lost even the thin connection they had maintained with their creators. They were truly alone now, belonging nowhere and to no one. The council moved on to other business as if nothing had happened. Delegates discussed trade routes and territorial disputes while Zeph stood in the corner, invisible once again. They had thought this might be their chance to finally contribute something meaningful to galactic civilization. Instead, they had been reminded of their place, or lack thereof, as the session ended. Delegates filed out in their species groups, talking and laughing together. Zeph remained in the empty corner long after everyone else had gone, staring at the empty chamber that perfectly reflected how they felt inside. They were nothing before the council, nothing to their creators, nothing to the galaxy that had no room for beings like them. And as they finally walked alone through the empty corridors back to their tiny quarters, Zeph wondered if they would always be nothing to everyone. 3 days after the humiliating council session, Zeph sat alone in the station's observation deck, watching ships arrive and depart through the massive transparent walls. Most vessels looked sleek and perfect, just like the species that built them. The Kelari ships were silver and graceful. The II collective ships were geometric and precise. Even the trade vessels followed clean, established designs. Then something different appeared. A small fleet of ships approached the station, and they looked like nothing Zeph had ever seen. The vessels seemed built from different parts welded together. Some sections were clearly military, angular, and armored. Other parts looked like they had been taken from civilian ships, curved and comfortable. Still other pieces appeared to be purely functional additions, added because they were needed rather than because they looked good. These had to be the human ships. Zeph watched the docking procedures with growing interest. The human ships did not follow standard approach patterns. Instead, their pilots seemed to communicate directly with station traffic control, making small adjustments and working together to find the best docking solutions. It was messy but effective. Within an hour, the human delegation had arrived on the station. Zeph saw them from the observation deck as they walked through the main corridors below. They moved in a loose group rather than the formal formations other species used. Some wore military uniforms, others dressed in civilian clothes, and a few had equipment that looked both official and improvised. What struck Zeph most was how they interacted with each other. The humans talked constantly, gesturing with their hands, sometimes laughing, sometimes looking serious. They treated each other like they genuinely enjoyed being together, regardless of their different roles or ranks. Later that day, Zeph was in the station's main dining area, sitting alone at a small table in the corner as usual. Most species ate only with their own kind, creating clear boundaries even during mealtimes. Zeph typically ate quickly and left, trying to avoid the stares and whispers. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Zeph looked up to see a human woman standing next to their table. She had dark hair pulled back and wore a uniform that marked her as the delegation's leader. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, according to the files Zeph had read. "No, Ambassador," Zeph said quietly. "But I should warn you, most species prefer not to eat near biosynthetic hybrids." Elena sat down anyway, setting her meal tray on the table. "Good thing I'm human then. Mind if I ask your name?" "Zeph 7. "Elena, nice to meet you, Zeph." She began eating like this was completely normal. "I heard you tried to speak during our membership discussion the other day. What did you want to say?" Zeph was surprised by the direct question. No delegate had ever asked for their opinion about anything. "I had research about human integration approaches, but hybrids are not allowed to speak in council sessions." "That seems like a waste," Elena said. "You probably know more about integration challenges than anyone else here. You live them every day." Before Zeph could respond, more humans joined them at the table. Dr. James Chun, a xenobiologist with curious eyes and equipment-covered clothing. Admiral Sarah Torres, whose military bearing softened when she smiled. Engineer Marcus Webb, who looked at everything like he was figuring out how it worked. "This is Zeph 7, Elena told the others. "They're biosynthetic, which means they understand both organic and artificial systems better than anyone." "Fascinating," Dr. Chun said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "How do you manage the interface between biological and synthetic components?" "That's one of our biggest research challenges." Zeph hesitated. They had never discussed their nature with anyone, who seemed actually interested rather than disgusted or curious in a clinical way. The neural pathways require constant balancing. Organic thoughts process emotions and creativity, while synthetic components handle logic and data storage. Finding harmony between them took years of adjustment. "We've been working on similar challenges," Marcus said. "Our Ship A is worked directly with human crew members, but we're still learning how to optimize the partnership. Different thinking patterns, different processing speeds." Admiral Torres nodded. "In our military, we found that mixed units often outperform pure human or pure AI teams. The different perspectives help solve problems neither could handle alone." Zeph stared at them. These humans talked about integration like it was valuable, not like it was a mistake or abomination. They asked questions because they wanted to learn, not because they were trying to find flaws. "The Kelari consider biosynthetic beings to be failed experiments," Zeph said carefully. "The AI collective believes we lack logical purity. Most species think we should not exist." Elena's expression hardened. "Most species are wrong about a lot of things. In human space, we've learned that diversity makes us stronger. We have people from different worlds, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. Some of our best innovations come from combining different approaches." Over the following days, the humans continued to include Zeph in their activities. They invited them to informal strategy sessions, asked for advice about council procedures, and shared stories about their own experiences. Admiral Torres told Zeph about human military units where former enemies worked together, where soldiers with different skills covered each other's weaknesses. Dr. Chun described research stations where human scientists collaborated with AI systems. each contributing unique capabilities to solve complex problems. Marcus shared the most meaningful story. "I grew up in a settlement where nobody quite fit anywhere else," he said. "Refugees from corporate wars, people with unusual genetic modifications, eyes who wanted to work with humans instead of in pure AI communities. Everyone told us we were a mistake, that our settlement would fail because we were too different from each other." "What happened?" Zeph asked. "We became one of the most successful colonies in human space. Turns out, when you put together people who've all been told they don't belong, they work really hard to make a place where everyone belongs." For the first time in their existence, Zeph felt something they had never experienced before. These humans did not just tolerate their hybrid nature, they valued it. They saw Zeph's mixed background not as contamination but as a unique perspective worth hearing. When Elena asked Zeph to represent human interests in council sessions where the main delegation could not be present, Zeph was shocked. "You trust me with sensitive information?" Zeph asked. "You understand what it's like to be rejected for being different," Elena replied. "You know what it means to be judged by what you are instead of who you are. If anyone will fight for the right to belong, it's you." That night, Zeph looked out at the stars and felt something new. For 27 years, they had searched for a place in the galaxy. They had never imagined that place might be with a species most others consider primitive and violent. The humans had not just welcomed Zeph, they had made them feel like they belonged to something larger than themselves. For the first time, Zeph understood what family might feel like. The message came during Zeph's morning maintenance cycle, when they were most vulnerable. A holographic image of the Kalari Prime delegate appeared in their quarters without warning, his tall form filling the small space with intimidating presence. "Hybrid designation Zeph 7, the Prime said, his voice cold and formal. "You have been observed consorting with the human delegation. This behavior violates your observer status and brings shame to Kalari science." Zeph sat up slowly, their synthetic components still running diagnostic routines while their organic brain struggled to process the unexpected communication. "Prime Delegate, I have committed no violations. I am allowed to interact with other beings on the station. You are allowed to exist only because of Kalari tolerance," the Prime replied. "That tolerance has limits. You will cease all contact with the humans immediately. You will not attend their meetings, eat at their tables, or provide them with any assistance." The hologram leaned closer, its presence somehow more threatening than if the Prime had been physically present. "Furthermore, you will report to us any sensitive information you may have gained during your inappropriate association with these primitives." Zeph felt their biosynthetic heart skip several beats. "I cannot spy on beings who have shown me kindness, Prime Delegate. Then you choose exile." The Prime's words hit like ice water. "Without access to Kalari biosynthetic maintenance facilities, your hybrid systems will begin failing within 6 months. Your organic components will reject the synthetic ones. Your synthetic components will poison the organic ones. You will die slowly and painfully." The hologram paused to let this sink in. "However, if you cooperate, the Kalari Empire is prepared to offer you full maintenance support and perhaps even improvements to your systems. You could become a more perfect synthesis of organic and artificial, no longer the crude experiment you currently are." Zeph had dreamed of such an offer for years. The chance to be more than a rejected prototype, to finally gain acceptance from their creators. But the price was betraying the only beings who had ever treated them as an equal. "I need time to consider this," Zeph said. "You have 48 hours, the Prime replied. And the hologram vanished. Zeph had barely recovered from the Kalari ultimatum when another unexpected visitor arrived. The crystalline form of a Zephorian delegate, shimmered into their quarters through the door. Their species' natural ability to phase through solid matter, making walls meaningless. Biosynthetic entity. The Zephyrian spoke in harmonic tones that resonated through Zeph's synthetic components. We bring an opportunity for acceptance. More delegates materialized around Zeph's small room. A Vorthic with clicking mandibles. A Nexari whose gaseous form barely held together in the station's atmosphere. Representatives from 6 different species, all looking at Zeph with interest they had never shown before. The humans pose a threat to galactic stability, the Vorthic delegate said. Their chaotic nature will disrupt careful balances we have maintained for centuries. They must not be allowed to join the council. The Nexari's voice whispered from speakers in the walls. But their application has gained support from several smaller species. They appeal to others who feel excluded from power structures. This makes direct opposition difficult. However, the Zephyrian continued, evidence of human aggression or deception would end their application immediately. Evidence that only someone close to them could provide. Zeph understood what they were asking. You want me to spy on the humans? We want you to help preserve galactic peace, the Vorthic said. In return, we offer you something the Kalari never will. Full acceptance as a council observer with voting privileges. You would represent biosynthetic interests across the galaxy. The Nexari added, other hybrid beings exist in secret, hidden and rejected like you. You could speak for all of them. You could give them a voice in galactic affairs. This offer was even more tempting than the Kalari's. Not just personal acceptance, but the chance to help other beings like themselves. Zeph had always dreamed of becoming an advocate for the forgotten and rejected. What kind of evidence would you need? Zeph asked carefully. Anything that shows human duplicity, the Zephyrian replied. Secret military preparations, hidden weapons, plans for expansion or conquest. Surely they have revealed such things to you in their casual conversations. Zeph thought about their time with the humans. Elena's discussions of diplomatic strategy were open and peaceful. Marcus's stories about failed colonies and difficult integrations. Dr. Chun's research on cooperation between organic and artificial minds. Admiral Torres's tales of soldiers who become heroes by protecting others rather than conquering them. I have found no evidence of aggression or deception. Zeph, truthfully. Then create it, the Vorthic said bluntly. Misinterpret their words. Suggest hidden meanings in innocent statements. Plant listening devices in their quarters. One way or another, provide us with what we need. The delegation began to fade from the room, leaving only the Zephyrian behind. You have 48 hours to decide, they said, echoing the Kalari deadline. Choose wisely. This opportunity will not come again. Alone again, Zeph tried to process 2 impossible choices. Betray the humans and gain acceptance from their creators, or betray the humans and gain power to help others like themselves. Either way, the price was destroying the only relationship where they had ever felt valued. 2 days later, during what should have been a routine council session, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as automated systems announced a critical security breach. Someone had attempted to override the station's defensive systems, temporarily taking control of weapon arrays pointed at the diplomatic quarters. The attempt had been stopped, but evidence pointed directly at the human delegation. Security recordings showed someone accessing restricted terminals using human authorization codes. Digital forensics revealed that the attack had originated from computers in the human quarters. As delegates shouted accusations and demanded immediate action. Zeph sat in their observer corner and felt their world crumbling. They had been in the humans' quarters many times over the past week. They had access to human authorization codes because Elena had trusted them with diplomatic communications. Anyone watching their movements could have easily framed the humans using Zeph's own access. This was the evidence the other species had wanted. Evidence that would destroy the human application and probably lead to their expulsion from the station. Evidence that made it look like the humans had tried to take control of Council defenses, possibly to attack other delegations. But Zeph knew the truth. They had been with Elena and her team for most of the past day, discussing peaceful integration strategies and sharing stories about their respective homes. The humans had been nowhere near the restricted terminals when the attack occurred. The frame was perfect, except for one detail. The conspirators had not expected Zeph to be with the humans during the critical time period. They had expected them to be alone, with no alibi that anyone would believe. In the chaos of accusations and demands for justice, Zeph realized they faced a third choice they had not considered. They could remain silent and let the humans take the blame, gaining acceptance through their destruction. They could speak up and defend the humans, losing any chance of acceptance but staying true to the first beings who had ever shown them kindness. Or they could do something no one expected from a powerless hybrid. They could fight back. Admiral Torres had told them that family meant standing together when everything fell apart. Dr. Chun had said that the best solutions came from combining different perspectives. Marcus had shared stories about outcasts who built something better than what they had lost. For the first time in their existence, Zeph knew exactly who they wanted to be. Zeph stood up in the observer section, their movement barely noticed amid the chaos of shouting delegates and flashing emergency lights. The council chamber had erupted into accusations and demands for immediate human expulsion. Some species called for criminal charges. Others wanted the humans arrested and imprisoned. "The evidence is clear," the Kelari Prime announced over the noise. Humans attempted to seize control of station defenses. This proves they are too dangerous for council membership. Ambassador Elena stood at the human delegation table, her face pale but determined. "Council members, we had nothing to do with this attack. Our people were in diplomatic meetings all day. We can provide detailed records of our activities." "Human records prove nothing," the Vorthic delegate clicked. "You could have falsified them. Your authorization codes were used. Your quarters were the attack source. You are clearly guilty." Dr. Chun tried to speak up. "Our codes could have been stolen or copied. Someone with sufficient access could have silenced." The II collective representative interrupted. "Human deception is well documented in your own histories. Your species specializes in lies and manipulation." Zeph watched Alana's face as the accusations continued. They saw the same expression they had worn 3 days ago when the council had humiliated them, the look of someone being rejected for things beyond their control. The difference was that Elena had Zeph, and they had no one. Until now. Zeph activated their biosynthetic interface systems, something they had never done in public before. Synthetic components in their brain linked directly to the station's computer networks, while organic intuition guided them through security protocols no purely artificial system could navigate. What they found in the station's memory cores made their hybrid heart race with both anger and excitement. "Council members," Zeph called out, their voice somehow carrying clearly through the chamber despite the chaos. "I have evidence about the real attackers." The chamber fell silent. Delegates turned to stare at the hybrid who had been publicly humiliated just days earlier. "Observers do not speak during council sessions," the Kelari Prime said coldly. "Especially failed experiments with no standing." "Then I resign my observer status," Zeph replied, walking down toward the main floor. "I speak now as an independent witness to crimes against the council." Elena looked surprised but hopeful. Admiral Torres leaned forward with interest. Dr. Chun pulled out recording equipment, ready to document whatever Zeph had discovered. Using my biosynthetic abilities, I accessed station memory cores to trace the real source of the attack, Zef announced. The evidence against humans was planted. The authorization codes were copied during routine diplomatic communications. The attack originated not from human quarters, but from a mobile relay device that moved through the station's ventilation system. The Zephyrian delegate shimmered with what might have been nervousness. Impossible. Security scanned the entire station. No such device exists. Zef smiled, feeling their synthetic components process data while organic instincts read the room. It exists because it was designed by beings who can phase through solid matter. Beings who needed to place evidence in human quarters without being detected. Beings who could access restricted areas without using doors. The chamber erupted again, but this time the accusations flew toward the Zephyrian section. Other delegates demanded explanations. The crystalline beings tried to defend themselves, but their harmonic voices sounded desperate rather than confident. Furthermore, Zef continued, their voice cutting through the noise. Communication records show coordination between 6 species to frame the humans. The Kelari provided biosynthetic access codes. The Vorthic offered security expertise. The Nexari handled data manipulation. The Zephyrians placed physical evidence. 2 other species provided political cover and false witness statements. The conspiracy was unraveling faster than anyone could stop it. Delegates who had seemed unified in their hatred of humans suddenly found themselves accused of serious crimes. The evidence was undeniable because it came from system logs that no one had thought to alter. No one expected a biosynthetic hybrid to access restricted data cores. These accusations are baseless, the Kelari Prime shouted. This hybrid has clearly been corrupted by human influence. Their testimony cannot be trusted. Then let the station's AI systems verify every claim, Elena said, stepping forward to stand beside Zef. Let independent analysis confirm what Zef discovered. The AI collective representative, who had been silent during the revelations, activated several scanning protocols. Within minutes, their mechanical voice confirmed what Zef had found. All claims are accurate. Conspiracy evidence is conclusive. Human delegation is innocent of all charges. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications sank in. The species that had condemned humans for deception had been caught in an elaborate deception themselves. The beings that had claimed humans were too violent for civilization had just attempted to frame them for attempted murder. But Zef's victory came with an immediate price. Biosynthetic designation Zef 7 is hereby banished from all Kelari territories, the Prime announced, his voice shaking with rage. They have violated their creation purpose and betrayed their makers. They are no longer welcome in any facility that supports hybrid life forms. Similar banishments came from the other conspirator species. Zef was formally exiled from the homes they had never truly had, cut off from the medical facilities they needed to survive, declared unwelcome across most of the galaxy. But before despair could set in, Ambassador Elena stepped forward again. The Human Alliance formally offers political asylum to Zef 7, she announced to the stunned council. We extend full citizenship and all protections of human law. Admiral Torres stood up in the gallery. Anyone who stands with us when everything goes wrong deserves our protection when they need it. Dr. Chun added his voice. Zef's unique abilities and perspective would make them invaluable to human research and diplomatic efforts. We would be honored to have them join our communities. Marcus Webb appeared beside the other humans. We told you before, humans specialize in making families out of people nobody else wants. Zef just proved they're exactly the kind of person we want as family. The council session ended in confusion and investigation procedures, but Zef barely noticed. They were surrounded by humans who treated their exile not as abandonment, but as liberation. Elena immediately began processing citizenship paperwork. Dr. Chun discussed research opportunities that would let Zeph help other hybrid beings. Admiral Torres talked about defense positions, where biosynthetic abilities would be valued rather than feared. Over the following days, as council investigators confirmed the conspiracy and began formal proceedings against the guilty species, Zeph learned what human citizenship really meant. Dr. Chen's team had already developed biosynthetic medical facilities specifically designed to help beings like Zeph, not to study them or fix them, but to support them in becoming whatever they wanted to be. We've been working on this for months, Dr. Chen explained as he showed Zeph the new medical bay designs. We know there are biosynthetic beings throughout the galaxy who are suffering because they can't get proper care. We want to change that. Elena added, your exposure of the conspiracy proved something important to the Council. Humans don't just accept diversity. We use it to make everyone stronger. That's exactly the kind of leadership galactic civilization needs right now. That night, as Zeph reviewed citizenship documents that would give them more rights and protections than they had ever imagined possible, they realized something profound. They had not just found acceptance among humans. They had discovered their own strength and purpose. The beings who had rejected them thought hybrids were weak because they belonged nowhere. But Zeph had just proven that belonging nowhere meant they could see things others could not, access systems others could not reach, and stand up for justice when others were too invested in the status quo. They were not a failed experiment after all. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. 6 months later, Zeph stood in the same council chamber where they had once been humiliated and silenced. But everything was different now. Instead of hiding in the back corner as a powerless observer, they occupied a place of honor at the diplomatic table. The nameplate in front of them read Biosynthetic Liaison Officer, Human Alliance in multiple galactic languages. The transformation had not been easy. Zeph's new role meant traveling across human space, finding other hybrid beings who had been rejected and abandoned. Some were hiding in remote colonies, afraid to reveal their mixed nature. Others worked in dangerous jobs where pure organic or artificial beings could not survive. Many had given up hope of ever being accepted anywhere. But humans had kept their promise about creating places where everyone belonged. The new biosynthetic medical centers were not just hospitals. They were community centers where hybrids could meet others like themselves, share experiences, and build the support networks they had never had before. Dr. Chen's research had advanced rapidly with input from hybrid volunteers. Instead of trying to fix biosynthetic beings, his team had learned to enhance their unique capabilities. Zeph's own systems had been upgraded not to make them more human, but to make them more effectively themselves. Today's council session would decide the final vote on human membership. The conspiracy revelations 6 months ago had changed many delegates' opinions, but the process had required extensive investigation and political maneuvering. Ambassador Elena sat beside Zeph at the human delegation table, reviewing notes one final time. Admiral Torres occupied the military advisor's seat, relaxed but alert. Dr. Chen had his usual collection of research devices, ready to document the historic vote. Marcus Webb smiled confidently from the engineering position, certain that human ingenuity would win the day. Council delegates, the session chair announced. We gather today for the final vote on Human Alliance membership. Before voting begins, the Biosynthetic Liaison Officer has requested to address the assembly. Zeph rose slowly, feeling hundreds of eyes focus on them from across the chamber. 6 months ago, those stares had been full of disgust and dismissal. Today, they carried curiosity and respect. Zeph had become something no one in the galaxy had seen before. A hybrid being with real political power and influence. Honored delegates, Zeph began, their voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. 6 months ago, I stood in this room as nothing more than a rejected experiment. I was told that my mixed nature made me unsuitable for a galactic society. I was informed that beings like me represented mistakes that should never have been made. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably, remembering their own harsh words from that earlier session. I believed those words because I had never known anything different. I thought my value as a being depended on approval from species that had created me, or acceptance from councils that had never wanted me. I spent my entire existence trying to prove I deserved to exist. Zeph paused, looking around the chamber at delegates who now listened intently instead of trying to silence them. Then humans arrived at this station, and they taught me something that changed everything. They showed me that worth is not determined by what others think you are, but by what you choose to become. They proved that the greatest strength comes not from purity or perfection, but from bringing different elements together to create something better. The Kalari delegation sat rigidly in their section, clearly uncomfortable with hearing their former creation speak so confidently. Several other species that had participated in the conspiracy looked equally disturbed. In human space, I have met biosynthetic beings who are leading research teams, commanding starships, governing colonies, and raising families. I have seen hybrids whose mixed nature allows them to solve problems that pure organic or artificial minds cannot approach. I have watched as diversity becomes strength rather than weakness. Dr. Chun smiled proudly from the human table. Elena nodded encouragingly. Admiral Torres watched the audience, gauging their reactions. But more importantly, Zeph continued, I have learned that humans do not just tolerate differences, they celebrate them. They do not just accept the rejected, they find ways to help them thrive. They do not just include the excluded, they give them voices and platforms to speak for others. The chamber was completely silent now. Even species that had opposed human membership, listening carefully to every word. Today you vote not just on human membership, but on what kind of galaxy you want to create. One where beings are valued for their purity and conformity, or one where they are treasured for their unique contributions. One where differences divide us, or one where they unite us in common cause. Zeph took a deep breath, preparing for their final statement. 6 months ago, the Kalari Prime told me I was nothing before this council. Today, I tell you that I am something because humans help me understand my own worth. I ask you to give them the chance to help others discover the same thing. As Zeph sat down, spontaneous applause erupted from several delegate sections. Not just polite diplomatic clapping, but genuine appreciation for words that had clearly moved many listeners. The voting proceeded quickly after that. Species after species announced their support for human membership. Even some former opponents had been swayed by humanity's demonstrated commitment to inclusion and cooperation. When the final tally was announced, humans had not just been accepted, they had received one of the most overwhelming approval votes in council history. But the session was not quite over. Before we adjourn, the Kalari Prime announced. Rising from his delegation table, the Kalari Empire wishes to reclaim our former biosynthetic creation. Zeph 7 was developed using Kalari technology and resources. Now that they have proven their capabilities, we demand their return to Kalari oversight. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The demand was legally questionable, but politically explosive. Several species began talking.